Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, sponsored by the members of the GrandTheftWorld.com community. It's October 2nd. It's episode 100. We've reached the centennial episode for this journey. Tonight, we got a lot of different stories we're going to get into. I'll give you a little brief sampling. We're going to be here for about the next 6 or 7 hours, taking this week's current events, smashing them into contextual history so we can have better understanding, better decision-making during the week. We're going to talk about stories like Bill Gates came out and said it's going to be a hung election. I don't know how he knows this. He also hinted at maybe civil war in the future.
Bill Gates says we are on the precipice of a civil war. But what kind of influence does Bill Gates have over it, given the amount of sway he has over the mainstream media? And do the rich elites of which he is part benefit from it? Many of you will have seen, or at least heard, that Bill Gates has said that America is on the precipice of civil war, that polarization will reach the point where there are hung parliaments and it's impossible to implement power, and that it will lead to social breakdown. We contest that Bill Gates has more power than any nation, certainly than any government, that governments will come and go, Democrat, Republican, and Bill Gates' power will remain largely unimpeded. We also ask, what is the role and nature of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the donations in particular that they make to media organizations and organizations that train journalists? We'll touch upon too his role in Indian agriculture and the impact that he's had on it for good or for ill. Bill Gates is worried about domestic polarization in the US. Well, is he though? Is he? Oh, I'm never so worried about that, because remember when he was worried about that pandemic? He's made a fortune out of it, allegedly, which he sees little hope for in the short term. I admit that political polarization may bring it all to an end. We're going to have a hung election and a civil war, he said. Political polarization, says Gates, goes hand in hand with another issue, the spread of misinformation. Now, we couldn't be more sensitive to misinformation on this channel, because as you know, we've had one YouTube strike for misinformation and a lifelong warning. But whose misinformation is the most deadly misinformation? Is it mainstream media misinformation, which in my view could lead to all sorts of complications? For example, if you believe the misinformation that vaccines are 100% effective or 90% effective and stop the spread, as alleged by Rachel Maddow on this MSNBC clip.
The vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person.
Or contrasted with genuine mistakes to which we've owned up and immediately corrected.
You cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people.
How does the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation spend its money? And while I'm telling you this, why don't you, in your own mind that God gave you, determine what the intention could be of this expenditure? While other billionaires' media empires are relatively well known, the extent to which Bill Gates' cash underwrites the modern media landscape is not. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has made over $300 million worth of donations to fund media projects. Recipients of this cash include many of America's most important news outlets, including CNN, NBC, NPR, PBS, and The Atlantic. Now, I don't know whether you like those organizations or don't like those organizations. I've read things in The Atlantic, for example, that I've really enjoyed, and I've probably seen things on CNN over the years that I've really enjoyed. But what I do know, it's not charities, are they? It's not like an endangered panda, is it? Brian Stelter is not an endangered species. Oh my God, I'll only eat bamboo. It makes me very vulnerable.
Which sounds great.
These are businesses. Why would you give money to a business? It's not like a plucky little shoeshine boy or a little match girl trying to make a break in the world. These are large media organizations. Why are the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation making donations? And are these donations always transparent? And are you always aware when you are consuming content that's come from that organization and are therefore able to assess what biases may be embedded in it?
We also had this week Nord Stream 2 pipeline was disrupted in 4 different places in a way that didn't seem to be an accident. So we're going to be looking into maybe who was behind it. And Corbett did a really good report this past week. There's a lot of good news on that.
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine. Again, then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
we will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Seismologists suspect explosions damaged undersea pipelines that carry Russian gas. Get our terms straight. Nord Stream refers to two double offshore natural gas pipelines in Europe running under the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany. And we take it from Zero Hedge, who have been updating the story as this is a developing story even as we come to you. EU chief calls Nord Stream attack sabotage, warns of strongest possible response. The European Commission chief, Ursula von der Leyen, confirmed the Nord Stream pipeline system leaks were caused by sabotage and warned of the strongest possible response should active German energy infrastructure be attacked. Earlier, Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen described the three separate leaks on NS1 and 2 as deliberate acts, adding it's hard to imagine that it's accidental. On Monday, Swedish seismologists reported the detection of underwater explosions, shortly after which large patches of roiling gas could be seen on the surface in that area. As rumors also swirl over who's responsible for the incident, one message it sent was clear: vital systems are vulnerable to attack. As the New York Times reports, in response, Denmark and Norway, they're beefing up their security around their energy infrastructure. Norway, now Europe's most important producer of gas and oil, called for increased vigilance by all operators and vessel owners. In a statement, Norway's energy minister cited reports of increased drone activity around its coast and said that much of what he had learned of the Nord Stream incidents indicates acts of sabotage. Meanwhile, Poland's former defense minister tweeted, "Thank you, USA," with a picture of the roiling, bubbling gas up from the sea that I just mentioned. Poland's prime minister, meanwhile, laid the blame, of course, on Russia for targeting the pipeline, suggesting the attack was an attempt to escalate the Ukraine conflict, saying, quote, "We do not know the details of what happened yet, but we can clearly see that it's an act of sabotage, an act that probably marks the next stage in the escalation of this situation in Ukraine." Der Spiegel said the CIA recently warned Berlin about increasing signs of a possible planned attack on the Nord Stream pipeline system. Spiegel reported, citing unnamed sources, that the CIA tipped off Berlin in the summer about possible attacks on NS1 and NS2. And then another obvious warning sign back in February, where at a press conference, Biden said, if Russia invades, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. Reporter says, how will you do that exactly, since the project's within Germany's control? Biden says, I promise you we will be able to do it. That's the same guy recently seen at another press conference looking for a dead congresswoman, so who knows what's going on, James? Good Lord. Meanwhile, a giant hurricane over here is serving up a nice, I don't know, distraction for this story. James?
Yeah, it is a crazy story, and one of potentially incredible importance, considering the attribution for this action could have very real geopolitical consequences. So in order to understand the context of this and the real sort of general background of what's happening here, I will direct people back to an article that I wrote back in July of 2017 on US battles Russia over EU, where I was writing about the latest round of American sanctions against Moscow at that time, which happened to include sanctions specifically against entities related to special Russian crude oil projects, which, even at that time, I interpreted to mean anyone associated with Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2 has been in the crosshairs of the US specifically for many years now, because it does represent that tie, that literal physical tie between Russia and the EU, Germany specifically, that threatens US hegemony over the European continent.
Well, Europe is in a very, very sharp economic downturn. The sharp decline of output and living standards also shows up as a rise of prices, but the main fact is that the European economy is getting hammered by the sudden cutoff of energy, and now to make it definitive, the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, which I would bet was a U.S. action, perhaps U.S. and Poland. This is
right,
speculation.
Jeff, we got to stop there. That's quite a statement as well. Why do you feel
Absolutely.
that was a U.S. action? What evidence do you have of that?
Well, first of all, there's direct radar evidence that U.S. Helicopters, military helicopters that are normally based in Gdansk, were circling over this area. We also had the threats from the United States earlier in this year that one way or another, we are going to end Nord Stream. We also have a remarkable statement by Secretary Blinken last Friday in a press conference. He says, this is also a tremendous opportunity. It's a strange way to, it's a strange way to talk if you're worried about the piracy on international infrastructure of vital significance. So I know this runs counter to our narrative. You're not allowed to say these things in the West. But the fact of the matter is, all over the world, when I talk to people, they think the U.S. did it. Just to tell you, and by the way, even reporters on our papers that are involved tell me privately, yeah, well, of course, but it doesn't show up in our media.
We're also going to talk about stories like the World Economic Forum. They've got some unresources from their unsaid kind of partnership with the United Nations. They have a quote where they say they own the science. And it reminded me of Galileo and the Pope. And the Pope says, we own the science, and we all remember how that went. So,
you know, we partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. You know, we own the science, and we think that the world, you know, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do. But again, it's a huge challenge that I think all sectors of society need to be very active in.
Also, you're tuning to a podcast that has 900 more paid subscribers than CNN Plus, and we're going to get into some books tonight. Let me shift to the book cam. Katie Halper got the axe from the hill the past week over the Israeli-Palestinian issue. This is a report from the Trilateral Commission. We'll dig into that later tonight. We're also going to look into The Great Narrative, Klaus Schwab's second book. I spent a little good time marking this up this past week. We're going to get into it. And finally, foreshadowing our interview for next week, Whitney Webb. I just finished her 2-volume set, One Nation Under Blackmail. Here's what that looks like, all highlighted. So we're going to get into that sort of things and a whole lot more tonight with special guest Clay Clark from the Reawaken America Tour. I want to make the point to people, because it does blow their mind that you're willing to go through all this effort and not make any money.
Yeah.
You can only do that because you are a seasoned, strong entrepreneur who has, you know, you mechanize, and I watch your methods. Like you set something up, like your barbershop, your franchise. Yeah. You have it mechanized where you're looking to make a certain amount of money from the business, then you outsource and delegate it. And you have these things kind of running on not autopilot, but scheduled so that you can have the freedom to go do these things.
Let's talk about it. Can I do a screen share? Is it possible?
For sure. No. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let me click the screen share here. Okay, we're looking at this right now. It's this beautiful Skype picture. Okay, this is my schedule today. So let's go to last week, because that was the week we actually did it. Okay, so everything in red was an interview. That was a show that I was on. So everything it says you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, hosting InfoWars, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41. So I had 41 interviews last week. You know, I try to get up 47 to 48 every week. And then you look at Elephant in the Room, we have our manager meeting right here at 8 a.m. right here, boom. And then we have a all staff meeting, which is a very heavily skill training meeting. We have that at 9. And then I have on Wednesday nights, every Wednesday night, I interview potential job candidates every Wednesday. So tonight at 5:30, I'll be interviewing potential candidates. And so everything's mechanized and systemized. So when you look up a company that I'm a partner with and you go, wow, Tip Top Canine, that company is killing it. You guys got 17 locations. It's not because I'm a genius. And it's not because I train dogs. I build systems that are scalable. And then when you go to Elephant in the Room, people say, man, you must love hair. No, I don't. I just have systems and processes.
You know that people need haircuts. You know that people love their pets and need to take care of them. And you get in the middle of those needs and you offer service, which is what entrepreneurism is.
Right.
I heard someone said something negative about you because you're a serial entrepreneur. That's not a good thing. What does it mean that you can spin up a business, let it go, spin up a business, let it go, and have them all deliver you recurring revenue? I'd say the person making that comment is probably of the handcuff employee, I can't live without a paycheck mentality. He's never taken a business risk in their life that's paid off, or had the hard work and work ethic to bring it about like you do. As always, we're going to go to Luke Rudowski of the bestpoliticalshirts.com with his Sunday wrap up to foreshadow what we're going to cover for the rest of the night.
It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people become restive, and when the people are asking questions, and when the people don't like the policies of the emperor? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum. Then he begins to throw the Christians to the lions. And he has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep the idiots preoccupied with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor. That's why they pay a player on a football team or a baseball team $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a year. It is the Roman circus.
Well, I really do hope that you guys are enjoying your meaningless Sunday night sports balls.
What makes Autonomy uniquely empowering? Autonomy is a self-help course unlike any other. Over the course of our 12-week program, you'll experience weekly live lectures from Richard Grove, specifically designed to equip you with the skills you need to set yourself free. Free from the learned helplessness taught in our schools, free from the dependence on a corrupt system that serves only to uphold the rich, free from the structure of your 9-to-5 if that's your prerogative. Plus, you'll enter into a community of like-minded individuals who are pursuing the same freedom you are, and who'll support you and learn alongside you every step of the way. A lifetime of community and the tools to live however you want. We can't wait to meet you. Learn more at getautonomy.info.